Greetings and welcome to Conversation with Tony Mobley. On Conversation with Tony Mobley today, I am talking with Tlaloc Lopez Watermann. This is the 108th episode of Conversation with Tony Mobley. And thanks to everyone for being part of the new journey, powered by Mimo Live. We also want to thank everyone who is a part of the old infrastructure. I want to thank the team behind Conversation with Tony Mobley for all of your hard work. You can watch all of the episodes of Conversation with Tony Mobley by going to conversationswithTonyMobley.com. You can go to our website, and there you can register for the interactive chat, which is called Mukana, courtesy of Alex Lindsay and 090. There, you can put in your questions and you can vote your questions up and down to ensure that we have an opportunity to get to your question. Also, you feel free to write your question in the YouTube chat. And so here we go. We are going to get started right now with our conversation with Mr. Tlaloc Lopez Watermann. Thank you, sir, for being here with me today.
Pleasure
and
to be
for
here.
Those who don't know Mr. Watermann, we are going to ask him to just give us a brief but informative view of who he is. So who is Tlaloc Lopez Watermann?
I'm Tlaloc Lopez Watermann, and I am a lighting designer, projection designer, a scenic designer for theater, opera, and wherever else I can get my hands on. And I've also done a fair some work in the live streaming side of things. As the pandemic came through, I did some video theater, working with Zoom ISO. I also work as a support specialist for the liminal branch of the Zoom company, which provides Zoom ISO and Zoom OSC. And I been told I'm a bit of a leaf in the wind. I travel around a lot, and I do a lot of different things, and work on different projects in different parts of the country and sometimes world. And I am also proud to be a part of this show. I help with whatever needs to be helped with at any particular moment, and it's sort of started from early on. And it was a conversation that Tony and I had early on, as well as he had many friends that he was talking to about the process, and I'll let him speak to that a little bit too. But I think I was privileged to be able to have a conversation with Tony early on about this show, and it got me excited about seeing Tony bring out the heart of who people are, rather than just the technical side. And I think that that's happened, and I hope that it continues. And I'm going to turn it on its head a little bit, because I'm going to say who I think Tony is, and Tony is a very genuine and wonderful friend who has taught me a lot about humanity and about how we can bring the best out of people. And so I guess, Tony, I'm going to ask you, who is Tlaloc Lopez Watermann?
Well, since you asked, I'm going to share something with our audience today. So let's see if I can do this correctly. That is Tony Mobley in the hospital. Nope, I'm wrong. I am not in the hospital. I am in a rehabilitation center, and Tlaloc came to see me, and I was not in a very good place at that time, and I thank him for his kindness and encouragement and his his genuineness. Um, who he is uh, very dear friend to me and my family, and he has helped me. He has helped Conversation with Tony Mobley. He has helped Miracle Bible Way Church of Christ, located in the fabulous city of Macon, Georgia. He has been more than generous with his time and his talent for all three of those uh, components of my life. And I am very thankful for the person that he is. And he has gone beyond the call of duty. And I had someone tell me one day, they said, you know what? I think that dude really loves you because nobody else would be going all over the country doing what they have to do and then take time out of their schedule to come and see about you. And I said, well, I love him too. Um, and I had not planned to get on this path at this moment, but yeah. So that's what happens when the producer of the show turns the knob on the host. So this is where we are. I'm going to shift gears and we're going to go to the question that is being put in by the person who is actually being the technical director for us tonight. His name is Zachary Sorensen, and he is in Warwick, Queensland, Australia. And his question to Tlaloc is, how did you first get into AV and tech?
Well, when I was very young, my house of worship had me doing a couple of different things. I did some audio work with them, and I also did some lighting work early on. But I also, I'm a person who isn't naturally gifted in the technical side of things, but it interests me, and I feel like it's balancing for me. I do fall on the side of the aesthetic and the artistic a bit, and then so having a technical requirement of me, I find very exciting and interesting, and trying to understand how technology works. And so when there's so many different streams that lead to the river in terms of how this all came down. When it comes, on one side, there's the interest in the AV side, like you're asking, Zach, but on the other side, there's the interest in lighting design. And when I was when I was a young man, I grew up or a kid, I grew up in New Mexico, and the sunsets are really beautiful. And, it's just like constantly thinking about the light that was happening without really knowing I was thinking about the light. And then I had a class in high school that asked or told me the speed of light, and I was blown away by that. And I started to daydream about how I could make a box with mirrors and hold the light in my hands. And then that resulted in trying to put together a potential science fair project, which then resulted in trying to measure the speed of light. And I just sort of fell in love with it. And then I fell in love with theater accidentally, because I started working with the technical theater side, technical theater class at that high school. And then I went to another high school that didn't have a theater. So I started working with the local college while I was in high school on lighting design, and promised all of the sort of the college students who are like, don't get in this business. You don't want to do it. You don't want to do it. And I'm like, no, no, don't worry. It's just a hobby. And then I decided I really do want to do it. So I went to college to learn it. And then I did a lot of, education, higher education in regards to this. I went to 4 years of undergrad, and then I went to 3 years of grad school. And not everybody has to do that, but that was a very powerful way for me to kind of feel comfortable doing what I was doing and learn a lot of different ways of looking at things and how to think about things. And so that's kind of a long roundabout way of how I got to do what I'm doing.
Very cool. Thank you so much for that. We have a question from Dr. John Iddleston of Monterey, California. He says, what was your first professional performance that you worked on? And what is your most favorite performance that you have been a part of as a team?
The first professional performance that I was paid for was oh goodness, Jesus Christ Superstar at the Community Theater in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I went in, I got paid a little bit. I was the sound designer and the assistant stage manager. And how you do those two jobs at the same time on a giant musical, I have no idea. And we had, I don't know if maybe you could call me precocious, but I was very serious. That's what I was. I wasn't precocious. I was just always a serious guy, even as a young kid. And it didn't always end up being the best thing for me. I've learned to try to be a little more lighthearted about things. But the sound design was very difficult, and it was over my head because we were using wireless mics that were not very good. And I had to learn this audio console. And I did the best, and I wanted it to sound the best that we could. And we had to do a bunch of adjustment in terms of EQ and trying to get the packs to work and not have interference. And we had interference moments. And so I was, in that serious mindset. I was super serious about trying to get this thing to be the best that I could. And I went home one day, and I came back, and I found wine glasses on the audio console, and all of the settings that I had so painstakingly found had been reset, because what happened was that the head of the company wanted to have a party and wanted to play music on the system. And I was so upset and so deeply just, I don't know, it was almost like I was disappointed in why anybody would do that and how they could think that it was okay. And so I got through the show. I don't think I said anything to anybody that day. But then when the show was getting taken down, I had talked to my dad about it. My dad said, you need to write them a letter to explain to them how they were being so unprofessional. And so I quite literally did, and brought this letter to the head of the company and handed it to him. And he says, well, what does it say? And I said, it says that the only people that I've worked in this industry with are college students, and they far outshine your professionalism. And it is completely unacceptable. I just said this to this guy that was older than me. I was 16. It is completely unacceptable for you to treat this place like you have treated it, and treat the people that work here like you're treating them. And he looked at me, and I thought, here we go. And he said, you're right. So I learned that from my dad, that kind of honesty It doesn't necessarily get you anything, but it's right. And and sometimes it gets you less than anything. Sometimes makes things worse. But what was the other part of that question?
Your favorite
My
performance
favorite
that you
performance.
were a part of.
Well, quite recently, I did. I worked with a really beloved team of folks on a brand new Frankenstein opera composed by Greg Kaler, who I worked with on some excerpts of that same show in the catacombs of the cemetery, Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn, and it was seen by the artistic director of Arizona Opera, Joe Spector, and they commissioned us to premiere that show in Arizona. I just did that this past October, and it was hard fought, but we made a beautiful piece of work together. And the scenic designer, Bretta Garricky, she was also the costume designer and the projection designer. I was the lighting designer. Sarah Myers was the director, and we worked really, really hard and put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into that show. And I think gave the audience an experience that they probably didn't expect. And we sold out the whole run in Phoenix, and then we're told that they never sell out the run in Tucson, but we nearly sold out the run in Tucson, and got some really good acclaim. And I, from, in terms of the press, and I just I love when I get to work with a group of people that mean that much to me. And kind of all the pistons are pumping in the right way, even when there are headwinds, because there were headwinds. There were technical headwinds. There were professional headwinds. There were, just communication headwinds when it comes to how you make a show with all of the different parties pulling and pushing. If that makes any kind of sense.
It does. It does. I wanted to impose upon you, and we had kind of talked about this a little bit, but I want to be real brief with you showing us your mobile setup, and
Oh, sure.
also tell us where you are right now.
So so I'm in West Virginia. Who would have thought that? But because I had been spending some time with my dad and helping some dealing. I'm trying to change the way I say. It's not that I'm helping my dad. We're helping each other, and there are things around the house that need to be done, but that's for both of us. You know what I mean? It's not just for him, and it's not just for me, and I think that that's a powerful shift to make for myself. But anyway, I was driving back to Virginia in order to go to do my next gig, a Nutcracker, and it's a long drive, and I was trying to figure out how to get some other stuff done, and I decided I would stop in, the next place I could stop, which happened to be West Virginia, get a hotel, and get the hotel for 2 nights so that I could do office hours in the morning and then do conversations with Tony Mobley in the evening, and then do a bunch of work if I could in between that time and after that time, which will still happen after this. When you work for yourself, there are long hours. People tend to think that oh, you work for yourself so you can do whatever you want, but there are just long hours, and they're weird hours, and you kind of always have to put a little bit of thought and a little bit of time into these things constantly, otherwise you fall behind. And even still, I do. So, but that being said, you wanted to know about my mobile setup. I have a rolling Pelican case that I take around with my camera, and I always have my computer with me, and I always have my ATEM with me, and my mix pre, and I just essentially have this thing I can fly with, and I know like how I know how much the clothing is an afterthought. Like I have to have this stuff, and then you get the clothing. You make sure you can have enough clothing. That's like an afterthought, right? But I'm gonna switch over to an image of just kind of the hotel room. This hotel room is particularly good. I know that the Fairfield Marriott hotel rooms, oftentimes if you can get upgraded into a suite, because I have status with them, they'll have a separate little room. And this one even has, and a lot of these have these little rolling tables that roll out, and I can put my monopod behind it, and then set up the computer in front of it. I needed to get the computer higher so I could have a better eye line, and so the cups from the hotel. You got to be creative.
Yeah,
So.
that's great. That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Sure, no problem.
And let's see, we have a question from Laura Thompson of Beaumont, Texas. Her question is, Tlaloc, can you talk about the project you are doing around your dad? How is it going?
Oh, Laura, thank you so much for asking that question. It is slow going, because making a documentary is expensive. and so what am I doing? My father is a philosopher, and he's a person who's thought about thought, and thought about how people think, and thought about inborn personality since 1975, and has made his career and his life into thinking about that, and thinking about kind of how the human psyche works, and has made a living that way in terms of helping people with creativity blocks and things like that. But that's the least of the matter, is his living. It's more like this whole new idea of how humans work. And but it's very, very complicated. And this is a world that we live in, as I'm sure the audience knows, that likes to look at things in 30-second sound bites, but that's kind of too long, right? Like more like 1 second or 2 seconds. If you can't get all the information in that 2 seconds, then you're done. And so I have, for 17 years now, had a dream of wanting to make a documentary about my dad's work and the process that he went through in finding his work, his career, his happiness, his understanding of who he is. It includes a bunch of things. You could make it into a feature film, just the story, right, of how he got to that point. But that's not what I want to do. I think that should be part of it. But I also think there should be information about the actual theory, and about, some of the clients, and so I don't, it's not an easy idea to pitch and get money for, because when you get money for a film, what people want to know is you can sell it. And they don't know that about this.
Right.
The other problem is I'm his son, so I've learned and grew up with a particular vocabulary from day one. So it's like trying to explain to a English speaker what Mandarin is in Mandarin. So I have to be very careful about that. And so one of the things that happened in the last couple of years is that a client of his wanted to do a documentary, and then realized I had already started to do a documentary, and I had also had some footage. And so we have come together, and hopefully we'll be partnering in this project. And actually, that person was on this show, Santiago Salinas. And
Yes.
Yeah. And so Santiago Salinas and I, if we can pull it together, I mean, we both have to make a living, right? Like that's the thing. You can't just stop everything and go and do a project like this because you want to be able to do it, because you still have to do your everyday life and you still have to go and make money.
Right.
So and so there was a time about 17 years ago where I pulled a few donations together from various places, and that's how I was able to get the footage that I have. And the way that I thought about that, I don't want to get off on this because we're going to run out of time, because I could go on forever and ever. But what I thought was I need to talk to people who encountered this theory in the middle of their life, who had never heard of it before, because that would be a way to show people what it is to understand it, rather than
Right.
coming from somebody who essentially breathes it. Right. So that's a long way to say, I don't think it's done, Laura. I think it's paused, and I'm hoping that it'll continue.
And also, I believe your dad does help people with interpreting their dreams as well.
Yeah, it's a dream interpretation. It does surround dream interpretation. And we had a dream interpreter on this show as well. Um, um, uh, it's Aaron's mom. What was her name? I can't remember all of a sudden.
Aaron's mom. I've been calling her mom. I've been calling her mom. I've been calling her mom. And I
But
can't think of her.
she's very
Mrs.
lovely.
Hustledge. Mrs. Hustledge.
And please go back and look at some of these episodes, because there's a lot to be learned there. So
Thank you so much for sharing that. Dr. Chris Clark of Tempe, Arizona. Isn't it remarkable? Office Hours was designed to be a temporary peer helping forum for technical producers of video, audio, and live streaming small businesses. Yet, here we are, deeply
connecting.
connected.
Here we are, deeply connecting, he says.
Here we are, deeply connecting. Yes, Dr. Clark, we are. Dr. Clark, and I'm just going to go ahead and say this, Dr. Clark is a advisor of the Conversation with Tony Mobley show. He is also a mentor to me. He probably wouldn't say that he is, but he is a mentor to me in terms of the importance of conversation. And why is that important? It's important because when you look at all of the different issues that human beings have with one another, essentially, they are issues of a lack of communication, a lack of actual conversation. And it is not, I am not even trying to present or propose that this is a world where everybody's going to actually agree on everything, but a lot of things can be resolved through conversation. So I I have to thank Dr. Clark and my friend Tlaloc Lopez Watermann for always making sure that I don't forget the heart or the need for conversation. And we're going to go from there. And if you want to say
I just want to
something
jump
to Dr. Clark.
Yeah, I just want to jump into that and say that we have a group of incredibly disparate people when it comes to office hours. And I know we talk a lot about office hours on this show, and not everybody who watches the show knows what that is. But that just happens to be how we kind of came together in this particular forum. We found I didn't know Tony before the community of office hours came together, and then I met Tony through office hours. But I think we can replace the word office hours every time you hear it with community or with intent. You know, the idea that we are going to drop our preconceived notions of separateness by the wayside and just understand that, you know, there's probably something you Tony believe that I don't, and there's probably something I believe that you don't. But if we drop those things aside and have a conversation, then we may be able to become bigger, each of us, than we were before. I think that's why you may sense on one hand that there's some that Tony is a very spiritual human being, but that this show is very ecumenical. This show brings all kinds of thinkers in and brings all kinds of ways of thinking in, and the common denominator is the heart that connects those people, whether or not they have the same whether or not they have the same scriptures or the same beliefs or the same ideas or the same skin color or the same whatever. If we can just have this conversation and then see where the things connect, that's what's so important about this show. And I think about doing this kind of thing. And so, yes, connectivity. What was it? Connection? I can't remember what he said in the words you said in the question, but that's what it's all about. And I, as you know, the producer or whatever, as a collaborator on this show, I find it very important that we always have that in mind. If we can bring somebody in that is, you know, super awesome and gets us a lot of likes on YouTube or whatever, fine. But who are they? Why does Tony ask that question in the beginning? Who are these people? Because we want to know who they are without the pretense.
And as much as my family would say, as much of a geek as I am, it's not just about the technology. And although I love technology, and my family and friends do, my family and friends would be saying amen, amen, amen to me talking about technology. But it is about the heart. Dr. Clark is back again with another question. So he says, Tlaloc, it seems that you have been traveling the country lately. Are you a fugitive? Or how is your work taking you all over the place?
I am not a fugitive. And if I am, somebody you got to tell me, but but I travel from place to place for work. You know, I am a contract based lighting designer. So a company will hire me to do show XYZ. And then I'll do a bunch of meetings, a bunch of prep work, draft the plot, you know, do all those things ahead of time, send those along, and then come in around a little bit before or even a little bit after load in. The technicians will have hung the plot that I've asked for. I will watch a room run, which is the last run of the rehearsals that happen in the actual rehearsal room and off of stage. And then we go into tech week and we build a show. And this happens in a variety of regional opera companies, regional theaters around the country. And Chris, you know, here's the thing. When I was 11 or 10 years old, I began to travel by myself to see my family because I'm half German and half Mexican American. So I would travel to South Texas to see my family down there, or I would travel to Germany to see my family in Germany. And when I was 10 or 11, I started to do that on my own. And my parents would put me in the plane and give me, you know, that tag around my neck, and I would be you know, what is it called? Like a unaccompanied minor. And it was I endured it. It was such a wonderful, freeing, amazing feeling to travel like that. So my love of lighting came after my love of travel. And it's because I, as a person, am probably naturally a bit of a homebody. And so I like the idea of expanding my idea. That's a lot of idea in the last sentence. I love my idea of expanding my perception of home to more places.
That
If
is
you've
so
ever
cool.
heard if you've ever heard of Buckminster Fuller, who decided he was going to make the same geodesic dome all over the world so that he could feel at home anywhere. It's a little bit like I feel about my travel. It doesn't feel like I'm traveling. It just feels like my home is moving with me.
Very cool. Thank you so much for that. Can you talk about your role of producer for Conversation with Tony Mobley?
Yeah, I mean, Tony, I want this to be a back and forth a little bit, but I think that it started out with with just being a cheerleader in some ways, and um, just to give support to Tony when it seems like maybe it would be scary to do, or he didn't have all the right things, or how is this going to happen? And then there were a bunch of people that helped with the infrastructure and putting it together and putting the show in the cloud, and people got really excited about it. But I'm going on a limb here, and Tony, I want you to jump in and tell me I'm wrong if I am. But I also felt like, because Tony and I were talking a lot about his feelings about how the show, what was important to the show, et cetera, that sometimes I was quicker to stand up and say, I don't think that's a good idea. Or what about this? Or let us not forget this. And I'm not talking necessarily only about to Tony, but also to everybody who had a lot of excitement about doing the show. And I don't know if that role is, I think sometimes people got annoyed with that about me. but I don't know. It was almost like I felt,
What I will say to that is that there were people who were about the show as a show and not about the conversation. And so that became problematic from the standpoint of, are you pushing the conversation? Or are you pushing the show for the sake of the show? And so that's kind of where we were kind of bumping heads a little bit. Not you and I, but other people um, made decisions that they were not exactly comfortable with the direction in which we were wanting to give value to whoever was on, whether it was someone who was well known and had, millions of followers, or whether or not it was, um, my teacher friend from around the corner. We wanted to give the same value to each and every person, regardless to their status in social media or in the larger community. And I think that was that was a problem for some people. And I've had people say to me, the kind of show that you're doing, how are you going to make money at that? Why are you doing it that way? Why aren't you doing content that's, going to bring in some money? Or, why are you doing this, these conversations about mental health and um, teachers' education, what teachers need to do and help the students at home, and all of this the kinds of conversations that we have had in the past, I quite frankly have been told that it's unrealistic and I shouldn't be doing it. And I can't not do what feels right in terms of I'm trying to remember who it was. There was someone who said to me that if you think that a conversation should be had, then you should make sure that that conversation is had.
I bet you that was
And
Dr. Clark.
it probably was Dr. Clark. And I, I just felt that, you know, that is that is a good reason for us to continue to do um, conversation with Tony Mobley the way in which we have, because um, you brought it to you reminded me of this. I think last week when you talked about the heart of conversations with Tony Mobley um, is important, and it is. And when I say that, I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about this of
Yeah.
what we're doing.
The thing
And
that comes up when you, Tony, give the respect that you're talking about to each and every one of your guests, to bring what is their motivation forward, and it elevates the feeling. I think it was Alex who said when he came on the show, I didn't expect it, but all of a sudden I felt comfortable. And it was, he says, I'm not used to that kind of long form show, he said, but there was a comfort that I had in just being able to talk about some things with Tony. You know what I mean? And I think that was actually a really good explanation of what you and I are talking about, is that it becomes a little bit of a rarefied space when you have the intent of respecting a person and who they are.
absolutely. And you know, we hope and we pray that that's going to continue. Um, we have had some changes that we've made after doing 100 shows, and so we're at 108, and we're still going strong. But we've made some changes, and we're doing some things in a different way, and so that speaks to the question that's coming up um, from Zachary Sorensen of Warwick, Queensland, Australia. His question is, how does Conversation with Tony Mobley rack up to be on set?
I don't know. Do you understand that? I'm not 100% sure what that question means. um,
I probably he wants to talk about the infrastructure of how we're doing it
okay.
now, and so you talk about Mimo Live and some of the things that we're doing.
Yeah. So when we were starting out with the first 100 episodes, we were utilizing vMix on the cloud, and we had a few people who could switch the show there. Super awesome, such super awesome way of working, because there's this cloud infrastructure. You can go into it, you can cut the show, and you actually use a Stream Deck, or you use a Stream Deck companion satellite, which allowed people all over the world, whoever was cutting, to use a set of buttons on their Stream Deck to cut the show, and they didn't really have to go into the sort of meat of, or the guts of vMix in order to build that. It was already built, and there were buttons that would be pushed, and you could just run the show. But we ran into some financial roadblocks when it came to that, because instead of buying a computer one time with the cloud, you buy time and you buy compute and you buy storage, over time. And so we ran into the inability to continue to afford that with the generous donations of people in the group, in the community. And, to no fault of their own, it's just at some point it becomes too much. And that's completely acceptable. So we thought, well, how are we going to move forward? And we thought we could do, we could go super simple and use Zoom ISO or an OBS, or there's a couple of different directions we can go. And then Oliver Breedenbach, am I saying his name right? I think so. Yep. Had been already talking with Tony about Mimo Live and how Mimo Live could probably do many of the things that we do for the show, and so we began the process of making a local machine, a local cloud on Tony's desk. And so that we can remote into a machine that is running Mimo Live and using an integrated Zoom connection point. So you don't have to have Zoom ISO. You don't have to have a separated contribution method. We just pull straight from the meeting, and we built essentially a Mimo Live file that had all the things that we needed to do with lower thirds and credits and super sources, et cetera. And then we're still in the process a little bit of figuring it all out, but it's getting better and better. Mimo Live has a control surface, and then we built a tunnel for folks that with security. That could go in and own and essentially control from afar Mimo Live, and we do that in combination with Parsec. And so, for anyone who might be interested, who might hear this, who might be interested, please reach out on the website or on the email or directly to one of us, and please please reach out, and maybe we can get you, train you to cut the show one day. And Zachary Sorensen, who is has been part of the community, a part of our show for many months now, maybe even years at this point. And he was a YouTube coordinator for a long time, but he'd been asking, I want to cut the show. So now he's the main TD, so please just reach out, and we can try to get you in, and it can be a good experience.
Absolutely.
And I think that Zach says that he actually wanted to talk about the comparison between what it's like to be on a set and on a show like this. Well, this is like sitting in your living room. It's a very different thing. So it's remote work, so you don't have to. But the craft services is maybe not as good, though. I was just going to say that. I mean, unless you order it ahead.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I don't want to minimize the importance of what Zach is doing. So Zach has had a few questions tonight, but he is also doing the TD, and he is in Warwick, Queensland, Australia. So he is in Australia, and everything that you're seeing on screen, he is doing. And so when you see the lower third show up, when you see the cut where both of us are up and he changes it to one of us, Zach is doing that. And so he's doing that using all of the things that Clark has just shared. And so if you have an interest, please reach out to us. And you can also put something in the YouTube chat if you have an interest in helping the show. And so we're going to go to the next question, and that is, any suggestions for what people should be looking to see in the future of Conversations with Tony Mobley?
I think what you should look for is an exciting new guests that you probably couldn't get to know anywhere else, because maybe you wouldn't even know to look to get to know that person anywhere else. So I would say look forward to having your mind opened, and come with your mind as far open as you could already have it, and it'll be opened further.
Very cool. Thank you, sir, for that. Okay. And we've already sort of talked about the infrastructure of Conversation with Tony Mobley, so we're not gonna belabor the point with that. I'm going to say next question. And so we're down to the end. So before I even read the last question, is there anything that you want to share that we haven't talked about yet?
Yeah, I think the other thing that I would say is, if you think that if you could bring something forward that might not be able to come forward in the same kind of forum, in other kinds of forums, reach out to us. Like, if you want to be on the show, let's talk about it. Maybe you can be. Maybe there are things that you'd like for us to cover that we aren't covering. Reach out to us. Please let us know. I think that we have a lot of potential for some really good insight and good information and good conversation. So as much as you can, just communicate with us. Go to Mukana, go to the website and send in some emails that way. And if you want to volunteer, please jump aboard.
Absolutely. So what is next for Tlaloc Lopez Watermann?
Well, I'm going to Virginia Beach to do a Nutcracker, which is a repeat show that I've done for the last couple of years, 4 or 5 years. Then I'm going to be going to Europe on a trip to see some family and friends and office hour community folks. And then I'm coming back, and then I'm doing a show in Pittsburgh, Iphigenie and Tored. And then I'm going to go do a show called Frida in Orlando. And then I'm doing $1 Million Quartet in Naples, Florida. And then that gets me to the beginning of February.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
And then I'll be in San Jose doing a show called Florencia in Amazon. And then I'm going to be double booked. I don't think I'm actually fully double booked. I'm working it out, but spring gets busy again. So I'm just busy with a lot of show back to back.
Well, I want to say thank you so much for being on the show with me tonight. I really appreciate it. And I'm just going to say I'm surprised we didn't get any questions from Miracle Bobaway asking about Mr. T, but I'm sure that I will hear a lot from them tomorrow night when we have a study.
Well, I will say it was a pleasure to get to work with them on a number of different projects, including the play, and I hope that they continue to do their good work.
Well, thank you so much for that. And they are sharing the production that you were principally responsible for on YouTube, and it's called Justice for All. If the audience is curious, it's Justice for All. It's on Miracle Bible Way Church of Christ website. I'm sorry, not website, but YouTube channel. And Justice for All is very interesting, great um, production on a shoestring budget. And I think they have reason to be proud of what they were able to do
Absolutely.
with
Yeah.
your help. And I'm thanking you for them again so much for your efforts.
It was a pleasure.
And thank you, my friend, for being on here with me tonight. And we are going to go ahead with the last question. You're speaking to the world. What do you want them to know?
World, I will say, remember that if you find that you dislike the way in which somebody does things, the person that somebody is, and you have problems with it with that person in your space, that if it goes to a place of survival, then only destruction can come from it. So remember, they probably feel the same way about you. So get out of yourselves and talk.
Have a conversation.
That's right.
Thank you so much, sir. You can watch Conversation with Tony Mobley on my website or on YouTube, on the YouTube channel, Conversation with Tony Mobley. ConversationWithTonyMobley.com is our website. Conversation with Tony Mobley is produced by valued audio-visual professionals who meet daily in office hours global, hosted by Alex Lindsay. Thank you, Mimo Live and YouTube. Conversations with real people. Stay tuned for new episodes and great conversations. Take care. God bless. See you soon. Bye-bye.